you're going to hear me kind of play up some different scenarios during this show because, hey, nobody expects Iowa to beat Ohio State, especially on the road. But let me just say this, given the schedule layout, we talk about the schedule layout for Iowa. How about the schedule layout for Ohio State? Iowa goes into its first bye week. Meanwhile, Ohio State has to travel prime time to an historically difficult place to play. And I don't know what that crowd's going to be like for Spartans Buckeyes. That will be a game that will have my full attention Saturday night. And then you have the Iowa game sandwiched between that game and a trip to Oregon, trip to Eugene. I mean, not that Iowa's going to be a trap game, but it's sandwiched between two road tests, one of which is against maybe the second best team in the Big Ten, maybe the biggest Big Ten game of the season, not naming Michigan, Ohio State. That'll be a Ryan Day. The Iowa game will be a Ryan Day coaching test. And if they pass it with flying colors, then I give kudos to Ryan Day, and that's what you should do. But there are times when, it's also late in the – I don't know what the average first bye week for most teams is, but given the schedule, I believe everybody gets two – no, am I wrong on that? Not everybody gets two byes? Yeah,
Yeah.
When is Ohio State? I'm looking at the schedule here. Ohio State has – okay, they already got their bye.
Well, they got a bye, yeah.
That's so weird. Okay, that's such a weird time to have a bye 2 games in after Akron and Western Michigan. That's the whoever makes those the bye week layouts. I don't know how that works. How does the bye weeks work?
They've got a bye after Oregon.
They get a bye after Oregon, but my point is they wasted a bye in a sense.
Yeah.
I'm sure they didn't want to bye after beating up on two MAC teams. That'd be my take. But the way Iowa played in the second half, back to Iowa, the way they played in the second half, they were really good defensively, really stymied the run. And they looked good in the first quarter too. It was really that second quarter when things kind of got away from a little bit. I'm sure Ohio State and a lot of teams will look at what Iowa State did in the second half and what Minnesota did in the second quarter and what Illinois State did in the first half, even what Troy did in the first half. Mark, this is the growing storyline with Iowa football is, can they put together 4 quarters? And this was the first time I think this season where they put together 3 quarters, 1, 3, and 4, but they have not put together 4. And I mean, as far as ratios and what's the word I'm looking for? They've scored 24 in the second half. So you double that. If they did that both halves, you're scoring 48 against what we think to be a pretty good defense. Now, I know that's not how it works. But the point is, they're not having problems scoring right now. And I published a short on YouTube here a couple of days ago, kind of calling out people who are being real negative, because I've been accused in the past of being overly negative about Iowa's offense. And now here I am defending the Iowa offense, Mark. Can you believe that? I'm out here defending the Iowa offense because I keep hearing from people, they're one-dimensional. Here I go mocking people again and making funny voices. You take the run away from them, what are they going to do? Mark, they haven't had anything. They've been winning. They've won, in the last 2 seasons, they've won 28 games without anything on offense, without a run game, without a passing game, nothing. Now they have a stellar run game, and we're complaining because they're one-dimensional. Hold your horses. And I've said since August, I didn't expect the passing game to be good. Now, my hope is, if things play out the way I hope that they do, and that I think they can, is this will be a big 2-week span. And although the passing game may not look great against Ohio State because it's Ohio State and that defense is really good, I'm hoping they grow during the bye week and during that game, and then they come back to Kinnick against Washington, sort of a new look team. And Tim Lester, from what I saw today, sounded pretty confident. I think he's a guy who is naturally confident in his job, and that's someone you want. But I certainly don't think we've seen close to every trick in his bag. And I know Don Patterson, I published a cut-up last night, of Don Patterson's takeaways from that second half. He was impressed with how Tim Lester responded. We haven't seen halftime adjustments, especially from the offense, like we saw Saturday in years. It's been. Normally, what do, Mark? We see a first half. We think, oh my goodness, this is horrific. And we think, well, they've got to make some change. And then they come out in the second half, and it's the exact same thing. Saturday was completely the opposite. They came out First play from scrimmage of the second half, they go play action naked, go for an explosive play. That kind of set the tone. And then that run game opened up, and, we saw some new plays that we hadn't seen from Coach Lester. And for the most part, they were executed really well. We saw a couple of different receivers get involved in some unorthodox ways. One way was big third down, and was it 3rd and 8 call down near like the 20, 25-yard line of Minnesota. And what does Tim Lester call? He calls kind of a misdirection run, where basically all the linemen go right. Caleb Johnson puts his foot in the ground, goes left. You have Cade McNamara and Terrell Washington, who came from the opposite side of the formation, coming across the formation, blocking for him. And then Jacob Gill is setting the boundary block, and Caleb Johnson goes for a touchdown. That's a great play call. Now, I mean, it's a great play call because it worked, but that's a gutsy play call too. It's not like, they went halfback draw. They ran a run play on 3rd and long, but it was something that totally threw Minnesota off, and it went for a touchdown. So just a number of things that are, as upon reviewing that game, there's reasons for a lot of optimism, I think, with the offense right now.
I saw that play highlighted on the broadcast. Yeah, with the tight end coming underneath and everybody else going in the right direction. And
it was actually a back. It was actually Terrell Washington, Mark. It wasn't a tight end that play. Yeah. It was Terrell Washington who was lined up, I think, in the slot. And it was he and Cade McNamara that led the way. And Cade never really had to block anybody. But Terrell Washington, who's a young receiver who hadn't really done much of anything, has a couple catches on the season, laid a really nice block that gave Caleb the time to not just get the first down, but get the touchdown.
I saw on 247, related point to the running game, that Caleb Johnson's statistics, which are ridiculous at this point, he's averaging about 175 yards per game at least, and leading the nation in rushing. And he's had a big game against everyone, and now against a Big Ten opponent, 206 yards, 9 yards per carry. That even against 8-man fronts, his yards per carry is exceptional. It's over 10 yards per carry.
Yeah. So, give credit to Caleb Johnson, but give a lot of credit to that offensive line. Give credit to the tight ends, the backs, the fullback, Hayden Large, who's running, what do they call it? Kind of like is it a T back or an H back? Not really the traditional fullback style. They've got him. They bring him back as a fullback a lot, but they also line him up on either side of the formation. I like what they're doing right now at the run game. And, last year they at times created big plays, but it was very limited with a couple of different plays, a lot of counter, and they've run some counter. They ran, I think what coach called it, our counter in the second half, which I think produced a big gain.
All right, Jack, appreciate you being here. Hey, all, I'm sorry I'm late. How much should we read into Tim Lester being overruled on deep shots? I brought this up to Corey before we came on.
So I haven't listened to the entire press conference. I was caught up with some other work, but I did catch the quote because you and I talked about it, and I'll have to review the whole thing in its context. I don't even know that I can really comment on that, other than I'm not shocked by that. But I my big question would be, to what extent is that happening? And again, I gotta hear the context from Tim Lester regarding those statements. But in certain situations, let me just defend Kirk for a second. In certain situations, the head coach is going to make the call, run, pass. I would guess in certain situations, let's pass, but let's make it a safe pass, intermediate pass, whatever the case may be. So I just don't know, but I know a lot of people will say, there goes Kirk, controlling the offense. I like that Tim said it. I hope that doesn't get Tim in trouble, but I like the fact that Tim said it.
That's what I took away from it as well, is that he feels comfortable enough to say it.
What's wrong with that? What's wrong with saying it? Kirk shouldn't be ashamed of that, because, hey, Brian could have said it. Brian could have, if that's what was happening, and I think that probably happened, but I also think there was just a lot of poor play calling over the course of his tenure. If Brian was getting overruled consistently, I'm sure he could have said it and whatever. But maybe I'm just totally seeing this season through fan colored glasses, black and gold glasses. But I still think I stand by what I said in my preseason prediction. And Mark, if my preseason prediction ends up being correct, if Iowa ends up clicking in October with the passing game, you got to give me some kudos on that one. Because I was pretty specific when I said that preseason. I said the running game's going to work right away. They're going to guide them. And then you hit October, you're going to see the passing game start to click. And that's why I think they go. I think my prediction was 10-2. Now, I didn't think they were going to lose to Iowa State. I was hoping they'd survive that game without the passing game. They weren't able to do that, and that hurts. That's why they could end up 9-3. Still hopeful for 10-2. I think everybody on the schedule other than Ohio State, I would consider beatable. And maybe if Iowa brings its A game, the other part about this, we talk about improvements during the bye week. Maybe, just maybe, we didn't see any trick plays, anything cute up Tim Lester's sleeve against Minnesota. Maybe he has something ready for Ohio State. Maybe he'll have something ready against Ohio State. We said that in the past, but this is a totally different animal now with Coach Lester at the helm.
Well, the good side of that as well is that if Tim Lester had a few shots dialed up and they didn't need them, they clearly dominated in the run game. It may be to Kirk Ferentz' credit that he said, whoa, we're fine. We're good. We don't need to do that, because then these are going to be new against Ohio State.
Absolutely. And if I don't think it doesn't sound like Tim was complaining about that. I mean, he may have been saying it like CD said in the chat, tongue in cheek a bit. So, like you said, hey, not giving anything away. And Kirk is he's a more experienced coach than Coach Lester. So you hope that the give and take relationship there is Coach Lester, from a play-to-play standpoint, is giving you play-to-play calls. And then at big moments, Kirk is going to defer or even in some cases overrule based on how he feels the game is going and the flow of the game, situational stuff. I've been critical of Kirk for some game management stuff, specifically the game against Iowa State. I thought there was horrible game management in that one. The game Saturday wasn't as close, so it's hard to evaluate them as it relates to game management. But if they don't take shots, I've said this before, not with Coach Lester, but in the past, if they don't take shots against Ohio State, and I know it's not always as simple as just take shots, but they've got to have something new. And they had new stuff for Minnesota, so I would expect him to have something new for Ohio State. They're not going to win. They're not going to win if they just go there and do what Iowa normally does against the better teams in the conference. Like, they're just not going to be able to do it. So maybe that means a trick play on special teams. Maybe that means that Cade finally connects, because he's tried to take shots down the field. He had a pass to Caleb Brown against Iowa State. Might have been a touchdown. Had a pass to, I think it was either Jacob Gill or Caleb Brown at week 1. Would have been a touchdown. And they connected on a couple deeper shots to Vanderzee week 1 and Gill week 1. So maybe, just maybe, we'll see that in a week and a half. I'm glad this is a bye week. I think it's a great time.
Oh, it's a great time for a bye. Absolutely. And again, Iowa can thank Michigan State for being better. Now, that doesn't mean Ohio State doesn't go up there and win 51-10, but they probably don't. They probably also don't go up there, and it's probably not razor close. It's probably a semi-comfortable win, but that they have to get into the fourth quarter to make it happen.
So you think Ohio State's, right as of right now, maybe a 16, 17-point favorite or more?
Oh, they're a bigger favorite than that. I haven't looked at the line.
Well, are there lines already?
Oh, yeah. I just looked up the Ohio State line. What do you think it is?
Well, that's what I'm talking about.
The early line. I thought you were talking about Michigan State.
No. Oh, I would think Michigan State would be at least 25.
Yeah, it is on the road. The site that I go to sizes up about 8 different sports books, and there's only 2 that had the line out, but it's Ohio State by 24.
I'm seeing Ohio State by what are you saying for Iowa?
Against Iowa, 24.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And then as far as Michigan, let me pull up Michigan State because I am curious. That's got to be closer to 30, no? Well, it's on the road, so
Yeah.
maybe it's about the same. It looks like Ohio State, Michigan State as of right now. Yeah, basically 20, right at 24.
Well, what you're seeing out of Iowa in this game against Minnesota is okay, this is the first Big Ten opponent they've faced. Well, they faced Iowa State, who's as good as half the Big Ten at least. But this is the first time that we've seen Iowa against a decent opponent be able to open up the offense. Not that they did it, when I say open up the offense, they didn't do it from a passing standpoint. They only threw, 18 passes. But to dominate on the ground, like, when's the last time that they had this kind? Well, I guess they did again against Iowa State. They were this effective on the ground for most of the game. So this is becoming. This is the second strong opponent defensively that they've been able to run the ball right down their throats.
And that's what I said Monday on that Google YouTube short was, do people realize with the schedule, if the defense can just avoid giving up big plays, and most of the teams on the schedule don't present this massive challenge in that regard, they're going to win a lot. I mean, it's hard to not see them win at least 9. At least. At this point, that's how I feel. If the run game stays the same, and it could go away, but no reason to think that at this point.
If they go 8-4 from where they stand right now and the way they look, that's a disaster.
Big fail, yeah. And I think 9-3 is a big disappointment. I think 10-2 should be the minimum in their minds. I mean, right now they need to be focused on going 11-1 and winning against Ohio State. That's got to be the focus. Not to sound like a coach, but if they beat Ohio State, then they have a chance to go 11-1. A good chance, I think, assuming they don't have a letdown against Washington the next week.
Well, they've gone 10-2 the last 2 out of 3 years
without an offense.
And their schedule's not substantial, even though the conference is substantially better. Their schedule's not substantially tougher,
right?
Because no Michigan, Penn State, USC, Oregon. And so they've got a capable quarterback, even though I don't think it's necessarily the right decision, a better quarterback than what they've had since 2019. And the offensive line playing this well. This is the best run blocking you've probably seen in how long?
Yeah, I think it's better than what we saw in 2020, but they were really good in 2020. I mean, I give them credit. That was a weird year with the COVID thing, but they ran the ball well and they scored quite a few points that year. But this is better, and they have a better back. Tyler Goodson, Mekhi Sargent were good. Caleb Johnson has the potential to be great, and he's showing some real big flashes of greatness right now. And I didn't expect that preseason. Happy to see it. Happy to say it. And so, again, special teams, I mentioned this too Monday. Guess who the Ray Guy punter of the week was? It was Reese Dakin. A week after people were complaining because he had a bad punt against Troy that ended up with a return for a touchdown, I said, hey, he responded in that second half, looked really good. He was terrific, averaged about 50 yards per punt on Saturday as a freshman. By the way, a 19-year-old freshman, Tory Taylor, was like 23, 24 when he got to Iowa. So this is a 19-year-old true freshman who's coming into his own, first complete performance for Reese. By the way, the Iowa kicker, Drew Stevens, has not missed a kick. He's like 14 of 14 on PATs, 6 of 6 on field goal tries, made a 46-yarder with ease on Saturday. Caden Weegens looked really good in the punt/kick return game. And frankly, if it wasn't for 2 or 3 almost meaningless holding penalties and illegal blocks in the back, he'd probably have double the amount of return yardage that he has right now. I'm not saying he's Cooper DeJean. They may probably not as good on punt coverage as a whole as they were last year, because what's better than Tory Taylor and Cooper DeJean? But my point is they, right now, look to be really, really good on special teams and really, really good on defense. I know people are still in the, they gave up big plays to Troy mode and to Iowa State. But they did that last year. And they, didn't really do that against Minnesota in spite of those guys had some, Daniel Jackson's a dude. So we'll see. Verdict's still out there, right? And they play an electric Ohio State team that I would guess you've watched more of them than I have, certainly, but they're not as good at receiver as they have been in past years. They're still really good, but they don't have a lineup of Marvin Harrison Jr. and Fleming and what's the other guy? Smith and Jigba.
Yeah.
They don't have a lineup like that. They've got a good one, but they don't have a lineup like that. They don't have a lineup like that. You can win. You can.
Their freshman wide receiver Jeremiah Smith. They say that he's better than Marvin Harrison Jr. was at the same stage
But
in his career.
that doesn't prove anything. That doesn't prove anything.
Or proves that he's better than Marvin.
It doesn't prove
Harrison
anything
Jr.
about this game. What do we care where Marvin Harrison's development was when he first got to Ohio State? I'm talking about when that group was
they're good.
When that group was older, like in year 3. I believe they were in year 3 when they played Iowa, right? Or year 2 at least. They're probably good. They didn't throw the ball a ton against Marshall, did they? From what I saw, they. By the way, why are they playing 3 MAC teams?
They did play 3 MAC teams, didn't they?
What kind of a non-conference schedule? What on earth?
Okay. Do you want me to explain this to you? I explained this to somebody this week that was all going crazy. Yeah, that is not a good non-conference schedule and not a schedule that Ohio State should be playing. And so somebody called me and they said, "Oh, they're ducking teams and they're scared." And okay, come on. they play Notre Dame, Texas, Oklahoma, etc. every year. They've got Texas on the schedule next year. Okay, so we understand they're not scared of playing anyone.
We criticize Michigan. We criticize Michigan. That's the only reason I bring it up. We have criticized Michigan for scheduling.
This is what happened. You know what happened with Michigan? Michigan had UCLA scheduled home and home, and they canceled it for no reason. For no reason. Ohio State had Washington canceled. They had Washington. It had to be canceled.
Okay.
So
well, that sucks.
Washington joined the conference. Yeah, I want to see them play somebody good. Yeah.
Why can I ask you?
They will.
Yeah, but can I ask you a question? Why would Washington have to be canceled?
Why are you playing an extra conference game?
Why can't you treat it as a non-conference game? Why can't that game just be played as a non-conference game? What would be the harm?
It can be. Other conferences do that. The Big Ten has never done that.
Oh, well, I guess that'd be my only pushback. And is that an Ohio State decision or a Big Ten decision? Is Big Ten mandating that Ohio State cancel those 2 institutions cancel?
I don't think so.
So wait a minute. So Washington, did they normally play 4 non-conference games? They play an 8-game Pac-12 schedule. How'd they get Wazoo on the schedule then? They play 2 Power 4s?
Washington State was in their conference. So that was a conference game before.
Okay.
So they wanted to keep the rivalry together.
I got it. So because it was on the schedule as a conference game, they were able to retain that as a non-conference game.
So
and replace
with Ohio State, this is my guess. They didn't want to go to the West Coast twice in one season. I know that the Big Ten's trying to keep anyone from doing that.
Sure.
Going to the West Coast twice.
Again, I could push back on this all day if I wanted to be devil's advocate, but my extra thought is you couldn't get an Oregon State to play you. You couldn't get a Wazoo to play you. You couldn't get like a Boise State to play you or even, a team
on short notice.
Well,
maybe not. They just did this. Washington just joined the conference like 6 months ago.
2 years ago?
No. This just happened like in January or February.
Okay.
They just joined the conference.
Okay, Washington. I was USC.
Yeah, Washington just joined.
Sure. I get it.
So, yeah, it's a bad non-conference schedule, and it's embarrassing from that standpoint, but Ohio State's going to prove whether they're any good. Regardless.
Sure.
So,
but what if they lose? I guess what the naysayers are going to say. If they lose, maybe a game here and then a game, maybe they lose the Big Ten championship game. What if they lose to Iowa and then they lose to Oregon in the Big Ten championship game? They're a non-conference champion, 11-2. People are going to bring up that non-conference schedule and lob a 10-2 Notre Dame that lost to Northern Illinois because Notre Dame plays. Now, the Ohio State has the advantage that they play in a conference and in
that was the wrong team to compare them to.
Well, I'm thinking of a team that maybe doesn't go to a championship game. Is my point. A non-championship appearance, 10-2 team.
Tennessee.
There you go. a Tennessee team that played Oklahoma. No, they're in the Big 12 now, or SEC. Who's their non-conference? Who did Tennessee play?
NC State.
No, they played 3 non-conference games, correct?
Tennessee. You asked me who Tennessee played outside the conference?
Yeah.
NC State.
Oh, I thought you said Tennessee State.
No.
NC State. Okay, but there's an example, right? The Tennessee fans will be lobbying for 10-2 Tennessee because they actually played a good P4 non-conference opponent.
Yeah, but you should compare the entire schedule, of course.
But would you agree that it would have been smart for Ohio State to pursue a Wazoo or an Oregon State or someone else? Don't schedule 3 MAC teams. Can you schedule somebody? So AAC.
I don't think they care.
Charlotte wouldn't come up to play you. Like, schedule somebody.
Charlotte?
Somebody from a better conference. We don't need the MAC. Can we get the American? Can we get the ACC, or can we get some other conference? The Mountain West is available.
You know what I really think Ohio State thinks?
That they're better than everybody else?
Going to go 11-1, and it doesn't matter.
All right. Who are they going to lose to? Who do they think they're going to lose to?
Oh, well, I don't know that they think they're going to lose to anybody. That 11-1's the minimum. We'll wait and see. I will say that I do think it's the best team in the conference, and I don't think it's.
What is Cardi G talking about? Losing credibility, saying Ohio State isn't as good. Who has said that? Who has said that, Mark?
No, you just said that they need to play somebody outside the conference, and absolutely they do.
I had them preseason as my #1 team in the country. So get your facts straight, darling, or whoever you are.
Maybe this individual didn't like the comment about the wide receiver core.
Oh, yeah, I've said the wide receiver core is not as good as it maybe has been in the past. Ooh, they're not as good as they have. They're not as good as one of the all-time college football units in the history of the sport. Wow, what a statement! Well, that's really going on a limb, Mark.